by the barest of margins. Remember the name. The catch, it's all over. Pakistan win. India lift the World Cup. South Africa ourselves didn't run. I cannot believe it. Australia go into the World Cup final.
The game was born here, in the misty fields of England, where leather met willow, where pride met tradition. 4 generations, cricket wasn't just a sport. It was a symbol of elegance, poise, and unshakable glory. It was their game, until a decade came when that glory turned to rust. The 1990s, years England would rather erase.
Because McDermott has found the outside edge and Putnell is out and England have been rolled in the second test.
It wasn't a slump, it was a collapse like no other. In that decade, they played around 107 test matches, and the numbers told the story of a fallen empire. 26 wins, 38 draws, and 43 losses that ended the same way. Heads down, hearts drained, beaten, not by skill, but by exhaustion itself. And in the limited overs game, the story wasn't much brighter. ODIs too were a struggle, a series of disappointments that left fans longing for a spark of the old magic. But the numbers were only half the torment. The real pain was written in names. They faced the world's fiercest storms: Wasim Akram and Waqar Younis, thunder and lightning, Alan Donald and Sean Pollock, ruthless precision, McGrath, Gillespie, Ambrose, Walsh, pace that broke bodies and minds, and the spin. There was no escape.
That's a hat-trick for Shane Warne, a great moment in his career.
Warne's magic, Murli's mystery, Kumble, Mushtaq, and countless others. Each one a riddle, each one a trap. And when England bowled, the nightmare continued. At the crease stood giants, the great Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, Steve Waugh, Sanjay Surya, Sourav Ganguly, Inzamam Ulaq, and many more. Every series brought a new genius, every innings a new scar. England weren't short of talent. They were full of it, brave, gifted, desperate to rise. But they weren't just fighting the opposition, they were fighting themselves, crushed under a system that demanded everything and gave nothing. A revolving door of selection that tore confidence apart. Graham Thorpe once said, "You're playing every game to stay in the next one," and that was the problem. This is a story of a fall so deep it shook English cricket to its core. The fall, the chaos, the reckoning. This is England's lost decade.
The whole world wasn't on your case, as I'm sure it will be tomorrow, and we'll be told by everyone that we're the worst side in the world.
Part 1. The build-up. The 1980s were a decade of highs and devastating lows for England cricket. After moments of brilliance, everything began to crumble. The team that had once held pride on foreign soil and at home found themselves humiliated time and again.
If they're down, they grovel. And I intend, with the help of Closey and a few others, to make them grovel.
In 1984, the West Indies blackwashed England 5-0. And they repeated the feat again in 1986 in the Caribbean, leaving English pride in tatters. Though England captured the Ashes in 1985 at home and again in Australia in 1987. These were fleeting victories in a decade otherwise defined by inconsistency and disappointment. At home, the team stumbled against India and New Zealand, and Pakistan proved an even more relentless foe, defeating England both in England and on their own turf. The slide continued. In 1988, the West Indies crushed England 4-0, and in the 1989 Ashes, Australia humiliated them 4-0 in a 6-match series, a series that could easily have ended 6-0 if not for rain. Remarkably, this Australian side was dismissed as the worst ever team to leave their shores before the Ashes began. Everything seemed wrong with England. They fielded 29 players in that series alone, while Australia relied on just 12. Stability, cohesion, and identity were nowhere to be found. From the Blackwash in 1986 to the Ashes defeat in 1989, England's record in Test cricket told a story of collapse. 40 matches, 18 draws, 19 losses, and just 3 wins. Yet, there were sparks of hope amid the turmoil. Speaking about ODIs, in 1987, England reached the World Cup final. Chasing 254 against Australia, they fell short by just 7 runs. But the fight they displayed revealed the grit and spirit still alive in the team. And the team was full of superstars, respected by fans and players worldwide, who carried the weight of expectations on their shoulders. Even as the decade progressed, new players with promising talent kept emerging. But these moments of promise could not erase the cracks running through English cricket. The team was tired and increasingly fragile, burdened by chaotic selection, overwork from county cricket, and inconsistent leadership. Every series, every match became a test of endurance rather than skill. As the 1990s approached, a quiet but uneasy question hung over English cricket. Would the new decade bring redemption, or would it reveal just how deep the decline truly ran? Before diving into the games and the disasters that followed, it's important to understand two key factors that defined this turbulent era: the fatigue factor and England's flawed selection policy, and how county cricket had a negative impact on both. The fatigue factor. The relentless schedule of international tours and county commitments took a heavy toll on England's players. Constant travel and the lack of proper rest led to both physical and mental exhaustion. Maintaining peak form and consistency became nearly impossible. English spinner Phil Tufnell stated, "We'd be playing on a Monday for Middlesex. We'd bowl 40 overs, get in a car, drive up to Old Trafford, lose the toss and be bowling against Australia on Thursday," adding that we'd be absolutely shagged out. Throughout the decade, England were repeatedly thrashed by opponents, an outcome that reflected not just fatigue but also the poor support players received from their own board. The system treated players as county cricketers first and England representatives second. Domestic fixtures often took priority, with international duties squeezed around county schedules. Players were frequently asked to turn up for England right after days of county cricket, leaving them fatigued and inconsistent. And it was at the end of the decade, in 1999, after hitting rock bottom, that England finally introduced the central contract system, recognizing players as England cricketers rather than just county representatives. This was something Michael Atherton had been advocating throughout the decade, even during his time as captain. And not to forget, the ECB itself was formed in 1997. Before that, English cricket was managed by the MCC and the TCCB. But coming back to the early years, this imbalance, combined with inconsistent selection decisions, summed up England's struggles throughout the decade. Selection issues. The system in the 1990s was so flawed that players had little choice but to focus on themselves, and they can hardly be blamed. In that decade, 28 players played 5 tests or fewer, and even Graham Hick, who played from 1991 to 2001, was dropped 11 times in his career. This left players constantly worried about preserving their place in the team. As Thorpe said, "You're playing every game to stay in the next one." When blokes who have done well in their first couple of test matches say it's all for the team, it's not really. That beginning is all about you. The board would rotate players who performed well in the county circuit, but replace them quickly if they failed, rather than giving them a prolonged run to develop at the international level. Another major problem was the obsession with finding the next Ian Botham. Squads were filled with all-rounders, entering and exiting the team frequently. Players like Ronnie Irani and Mark Elam were once touted as the next big thing. Then there were great talents like Mark Ramprakash and Graham Hick, who suffered a lot due to inconsistent selection policies. And when it came to bowling, during one series, the pace attack might be spearheaded by Craig White, the next by Dominic Cork, and in between by Darren Gough. While counties consistently produced players capable of representing England, poor management hampered the development of local talent. On top of that, the team lacked adequate resources for player and team development, with most support staff working only part-time. To make matters worse, leadership was weak. Captains had little control or authority. The horrific decade begins, 1990 to 1993. Now that we've touched upon the fatigue factor, selection issues and the role of county cricket, we can see how much these problems influenced the team and the challenges players faced. The story begins in 1990 when West Indian bowlers tore through England's batting lineup again and again, reminding everyone that England were miles behind world standards. But the side still gave some hope under Graham Gooch. They beat New Zealand and India at home in Test series and drew an ODI series versus New Zealand. But it was still visible that despite the wins, there was a lack of dominance that was bound to hurt sooner or later. In 1991 came the first Ashes hammering of the decade, a 3-0 victory for Australia. Then came the 1992 World Cup. England reached the finals and fought bravely, but when it mattered most, they went into their shell. Wasim Akram's reverse swing magic shattered England's hopes in the final, as Imran Khan's corner Tigers lifted the World Cup at the iconic MCG. That defeat closed a chapter for England. They wouldn't reach another World Cup final until 2019 when they finally went on to lift the trophy. But right after the 1992 World Cup, chaos hit. England plunged into another storm during the 1992 Test series against Pakistan. Wasim Akram and Waqar Younis tore through the English batting like a hurricane, leaving them reeling. Instead of working on their failures, the English media accused Pakistan of tampering, shifting the spotlight in a controversy that captured headlines worldwide. And then came the nightmare tour of India, a series that showed just how lost England had become. India had just been hammered by South Africa, losing 5-2 in ODIs and 1-0 in tests. Their record was poor, just one win in their last 25 test matches, and England arrived, believing this was their chance to bounce back. Interestingly, England coach Keith Fletcher scouted Anil Kumble in South Africa and concluded that there was nothing to worry about. He remarked, "I didn't see him turn a single ball from leg to off. I don't believe we'll have much problem with him." But Anil Kumble and India had other plans. England entered the series confident, especially with Phil Tufnell, who had played a key role in winning 3 of England's last 6 test matches with his spin. Yet, on Indian soil it was the home spinners, Raju, Kumble and Chauhan, who completely outclassed them. The trio shed 46 wickets in just 3 test matches, while England managed only 17, 8 of which came from part-timer Graham Hick. No specialist England bowler took more than 4 wickets. The results were brutal, a 3-0 whitewash. The first test ended with India chasing just 79 runs. The second and third were innings defeats. Not a single test was competitive. And that concluded the spin wash. The ODI series was drawn 3-3, but by then, the real damage was done. What made it worse were the selections. Paul Jarvis was picked despite a mediocre county season. In Kolkata, England played 4 pacers and just 1 spinner on a pitch that screamed for turn. India went in with 3 spinners on that track. It wasn't just a loss, it was a lesson in how far English cricket had fallen behind the rest of the world. Following that came another low point. The one-off test loss and ODI series defeat in Sri Lanka only added to England's growing list of disappointments. And soon after, another Ashes humiliation. High hopes, 1993 to 1996. England lost the ODI series 3-0 and were also trailing 3-0 in the Test series when Michael Atherton was named captain midway, with only 2 matches left.
Well, Graham's carried the can for the team performances not being especially good, but I think all the players would be aware that it's their responsibility to produce the goods on the field. If we can get to the stage where they're producing their best, and if England play to their potential, then it's a realistic possibility to win games.
Over the years, too many New England captains have been ushered in with promises of a new dawn that never materialised. At only 25, Mike Atherton is a refreshing, imaginative choice, but the team under his command is patently a poor one, and expecting too much too soon would be foolhardy.
Under him, England finally showed some fight, winning the last game comfortably, a small light in an otherwise lost series. English cricket was declining with every series, and all eyes were on Atherton to turn things around. Despite a forgettable Ashes against Australia, Michael Atherton was in excellent form leading up to his captaincy. When Atherton was announced as captain, the then chairman of selectors, Ted Dexter, told him that he would be the main voice in selection meetings, giving him significant authority over team decisions. However, after the side lost to Australia at Edgbaston in the Ashes, Ted Dexter stepped down from his position. Atherton's first full tour as captain then followed, where England lost both the Test and ODI series in the Caribbean. This series also included the forgettable game, where while chasing 194, England were bowled out for just 46. Things were only going to get worse from here. A win against New Zealand followed, but it couldn't erase the pain of months of defeats. With South Africa touring next, England wanted to dominate, but some shocking decisions would soon overshadow the cricket. In the very first test at Lord's, the skipper was seen taking dirt from his pocket and rubbing it on the ball.
And at the conclusion of the game, the match referee, Peter Burge, instituted an inquiry, and this is the statement he then read, and this involved Michael Atherton and the ball. The match referee has investigated under 4A of ICC procedures unfamiliar action taken by the England captain when handling the ball during the afternoon session. Consultation with the umpires and inspection of the ball confirmed that there was nothing untoward. I also confirmed that no official reports were lodged by any parties. I have accepted the explanation given, and I'll repeat that, I've accepted the explanation given, and no action will be taken. Signed, Peter Burge, match referee.
The Atherton out campaign emerged soon after, but focusing on the key part, Ray Illingworth, the chairman of selectors, fined Atherton £2,000, half for using dirt to dry his fingers and half for lying to the match referee. This marked the start of a downhill period. Illingworth stood by Atherton, allowing him to remain captain, and was quick to claim he had saved Atherton's job. It was encouraging to see him back the skipper, but soon Illingworth himself would become a source of problems for Atherton. Back to the Test series. Despite the incident, England were still thrashed by 356 runs in the first Test. Atherton stepped up with the bat in the next match, which ended in a draw, and England went on to win the third Test, levelling the series. Following this, England surprised everyone by winning the two-match ODI series 2-0 against South Africa. For a moment, there was a sense of hope and happiness among fans, but that optimism was short-lived as the next Ashes series brought another hammering. 5 Test matches, 1 draw, 1 win by 106 runs and 3 humiliating losses, first by 184 runs, then 295 and finally 329 runs. England then participated in the Benson and Hedges World Series with Zimbabwe, Australia and Australia A, but failed to reach the final once again. Throughout 1994 and 1995, England struggled for consistency in both formats. They had a few happy moments, such as drawing against the West Indies in 1995, but aside from these, it was mostly individual brilliance that gave fans some fleeting joy. If we were to talk about one truly iconic innings, it has to be Michael Atherton's 185 in Johannesburg in 1995. 492 balls, batting for 643 minutes to save the Test match. But speaking of tours, something significant was happening behind the scenes in the England camp. By 1995, the tension between Atherton and Ray Illingworth was becoming clear. Illingworth, who had started as chairman of selectors, had now taken on the role of coach as well. The issue was that Illingworth wanted absolute control. It is said that by saving Atherton in the infamous dirt in the pocket affair, he felt entitled to treat Atherton however he wanted. Illingworth's intentions were never malicious. He was a great servant of the game, but perhaps his desire for control overstepped. A few years later, Atherton launched a stinging critique of Illingworth, accusing him of double standards, damaging team spirit, making unproductive public pronouncements, and hindering the development of the England team by abandoning the youth policy in place when he was appointed. Atherton also revealed that Illingworth had tried to replace him with Alex Stewart 2 years earlier, but was stopped by the intervention of another selector. Atherton summarized the situation succinctly. I had my dream of the way English cricket should go, and Illy had his vision. Returning to the 1995 South Africa tour, beneath the surface, England's camp was grappling with internal tensions. Initially, when Atherton chose Peter Martin over Angus Fraser for the Durban Test, Illingworth praised him, saying Atherton was becoming a good captain for putting cricketing judgment above friendship. Yet, this harmony was short-lived. Illingworth's attempts to remodel Devon Malcolm's bowling action during the early weeks of the tour created major friction. Malcolm, The bowler who had destroyed South Africa with 9 for 57 at the Oval in 1994 struggled under the new approach, while Illingworth and bowling coach Peter Lever claimed they were simply fine-tuning Malcolm's action for consistency. Malcolm felt they were stripping away what made him unique, his raw, instinctive pace. His knee surgery before the tour and the lack of proper video playback made it impossible for him to fully understand the changes being requested. Matters came to a head before the fourth test. During a net session, Malcolm was helping a young local bowler when Illingworth interrupted, calling it a distraction. The exchange turned heated and public. Malcolm later said he was told to, though Illingworth claimed he had said either way. For Malcolm, it was the most humiliating moment of his career. This incident shattered the already fragile trust within the squad. Malcolm felt isolated and unsupported even by his captain. He later admitted that he lost respect for Atherton, who in his eyes stayed silent when it mattered most. While there were occasional moments of agreement between Illingworth and Atherton, power struggles and divided leadership defined much of that tour. By the time the 1996 World Cup approached, England had shifted its focus entirely to ODIs. Having reached the last two World Cup finals, they didn't want to let another opportunity slip away. However, their preparations weren't ideal. The 1996 tournament was set to be played in subcontinental conditions, yet England were busy playing series at home and in South Africa. Interestingly, the 1999 World Cup, which was to be hosted by England, saw them playing several Tri-Nation tournaments in Sharjah as preparation. But coming back to 1996, England's hopes were pinned on a 3-match ODI series against the West Indies and a 7-match ODI showdown against South Africa. The hope that ended as a disaster, the 1996 World Cup. After winning the ODI series 2-1 against the West Indies, England next faced South Africa in a 7-match series. A real test against one of the world's best sides. South Africa took the first game. England hit back in a second with a captain's knock from Atherton. But that was it. From there, it was all one-way traffic. South Africa crushed England in the remaining matches to win the series 6-1. An absolute hammering that shattered any hope England had before the World Cup. An absolute hammering. Confidence shattered, and the worst part, the series ended just weeks before the World Cup. England carried that fear, that uncertainty straight into the tournament. The 1996 World Cup was hosted in the subcontinent, and although England had played several series there over the years and had an idea of what to expect, they still looked out of rhythm when it mattered most. Compared to other Senna teams, England's performance was disappointing. South Africa won all 5 of their group games, while Australia and New Zealand won 3 each. England managed just 2 wins, and those came against UAE and the Netherlands. They still made it to the quarterfinals, but that's where their campaign ended. On a decent batting surface, England stumbled to 173 for 7 before fighting back to post 235. However, Sri Lanka, the eventual champions, chased it down comfortably without breaking a sweat. For the first time ever, England failed to reach a World Cup semi-final.
That's a good shot, right through the gap, and that is the 236 that Sri Lanka was seeking, and what a comprehensive victory. Terrific win for them.
2 decades of consistency gone, and with every passing game one question lingered: what else could go wrong? Ray Illingworth stepped down as coach after the 1996 World Cup and left his selector role the following year. Meanwhile, Michael Atherton continued as captain, but it was evident that England needed changes. Some adjustments were made, and while the team began to show improvements in ODIs, defeating India 2-0 and Pakistan 2-1 at home, their struggles in Test cricket were far from over. Although England managed to beat India in Test matches, they lost the series against Pakistan at home. That defeat marked Pakistan's 3rd consecutive Test series win in England, following their victories in 1987 and 1992. Atherton claimed that England's pitches suited Pakistan's strengths and acknowledged that his team struggled to take 20 wickets.
We are struggling to get 20 wickets in the match. particularly on wickets that favour the opposition more than we do. They're not the wickets that we've played Pakistan on, almost like you'd find in Lahore or Faisalabad. They're not typical English wickets, and we need a bit of help in the wicket at the moment to take 20 wickets in the match. So it is a struggle to win games at the moment.
The situation worsened when England were whitewashed 3-0 by Zimbabwe, a disappointing result, especially since they could have easily won the series 2-1 had they held their nerve under pressure. On January 1st, 1997, the ECB was officially launched, replacing the MCC as the national governing body for cricket in England and Wales. The board began implementing measures aimed at long-term development. But in the short term, England desperately needed results to regain their fans' confidence. Soon after, they slowly started to find their rhythm again. A ray of hope that faded fast. England began well, defeating New Zealand, and the newly formed ECB was working hard to bring stability to English cricket. But in between the rebuilding efforts came yet another Ashes series. The 1997 series didn't start badly at all. England actually won the first test at Edgbaston, giving fans a hope for something special. But they failed to build on it, and Australia hit back hard. The final result was 3-2, not as brutal as the previous ones, but still a clear defeat. England did manage one last burst at the Oval, where on a spicy pitch, Australia collapsed for just 104 while chasing 124. But by then, the urn was already gone. Right after that came a tournament in Sharjah featuring England, West Indies, Pakistan and India. And this is where England truly shined. Sharjah, a place where Pakistan had dominated for years and where India had plenty of experience, saw England turn the tables. Pakistan finished third, India fourth, while England won all three of their matches and ultimately lifted the trophy. Credit also goes to the ECB, who made some bold decisions. Adam Holyoke was handed the captaincy. Warwickshire's talented all-rounder Dougie Brown and Kent's Matthew Fleming received their maiden call-ups, and Dean Headley led the bowling attack in the absence of Darren Gough. They wanted to try one-day specialist cricketers, recalled David Lloyd, England's coach at the time, and how well that worked. That trophy win brought a huge sense of relief to English cricket. With the win under their belt, it felt like the perfect time to step up and dominate. But no, England lost an ODI series against the West Indies under Adam Holyoke, and then the Test series under Mike Atherton, and that defeat brought an end to Atherton's Test captaincy. The race for captaincy was between Alex Stewart and Nasser Hussain. Nasser had captained Essex successfully and was seen as someone who could bring discipline and intensity to the side. However, Alex Stewart was also viewed as a strong candidate, having already led England during Atherton's absence. In the end, the England Cricket Board decided to appoint Alex Stewart as their next captain. Under Alex Stewart, they did briefly bounce back, losing the ODI series 2-1 but winning the Test series 2-1. Then came the Tri-Nation tournament at home, featuring South Africa and Sri Lanka, the first of many multi-nation events that would define the late 90s. England reached the final but lost to a strong Sri Lankan side, the reigning world champions. That defeat marked the start of a crucial phase for English cricket, one that would either win back the fans or break their spirit completely. In the coming months, they would be playing in many multi-nation tournaments, including a World Cup. From bad to worse. Right after losing to Sri Lanka in the final, something even more heartbreaking awaited England. Sri Lanka's tour of England that year included a one-off test. Sri Lanka were a promising side, no doubt, but most expected England to dominate, and it began that way. England piled up 445 runs in their first innings. Muthiah Muralidharan took 7 wickets, but the total still looked commanding. Then came the twist, a double century from Sanajaya Surya, 152 from Silva, and solid contributions from the rest took Sri Lanka to a massive 591. The pressure was back on England, and that's when Muralidharan completely dismantled them. England were bowled out for just 181. Alex Stewart, the skipper, was run out, and the rest of the batting lineup fell to Murali's magic. He took 9 wickets in that innings and finished the match with 16 wickets overall. Those 16 wickets and that match broke England. For Sri Lanka, it was a turning point. From that series onward, their tours to England were no longer limited to just a one-off test. To make matters worse for England, their upcoming series offered little hope of relief. The first tournament of the new season was the Wills International Cup, featuring 9 teams in what was effectively the first ever Champions Trophy, a knockout competition designed to crown the best. England's campaign was short-lived, as they were knocked out by South Africa after failing to defend 282. Soon after came the Ashes, yet another heartbreak, with Australia crushing them 3-1.
He's got him. Well, what a way to end a series. 7 wickets to McGill.
The gap between the two sides was becoming painfully obvious. Months later, England shifted their focus to the 1999 World Cup, a tournament they were hosting on home soil. Before that, they played the Carlton and United series in Australia alongside the hosts and Sri Lanka. Yet again, disappointment followed. In the final, they were bowled out for just 110 while chasing 273. Their batting looked brittle, their bowling toothless. Then came the Coca-Cola Cup, featuring India and Pakistan. Out of 4 games, England managed to win just 1. It was as if the team had stopped showing up mentally and physically. And then came the real disaster, the 1999 World Cup. After the failure of 1996, expectations were low. But this, a group stage elimination at home, was the final straw. In familiar conditions, in front of home fans, England had everything in their favour, but they failed miserably. 5 games, 3 wins, and an early exit before even reaching the knockout stage. While one might say England had played enough series to prepare themselves, a closer look reveals quite the opposite. Their preparation was nothing short of disastrous. The biggest issue was selection. As Alex Stewart said, one player we weren't allowed to select. We very much wanted Chris Lewis in that squad of 15, myself and Bubble. But we were told in no uncertain terms that we were unable to select him, which didn't go down very well with us. Then came the decision to not give Nick Knight a chance during the tournament. Yes, Nasir Hussain was a fine player, but someone like Nick Knight, who was definitely out of form, had proven his caliber before and perhaps needed to be backed by the management. And then, the big question. When the tournament was being held in England, why were England playing a series in Sharjah? A month before the tournament, the dry, low, spinning surfaces of the subcontinent were hardly ideal preparation for the early summer conditions back home. To make matters worse, the players were constantly worried about their contracts, a clear reflection of how poor the state of English cricket was at the time. But just before the tournament began, an agreement was finally reached. The players turned up, though the uncertainty had already taken its toll on morale and focus. The ECB had no choice but to act. Alex Stewart was stripped of the captaincy and the responsibility was handed to Nasir Hussain. But change didn't come instantly. When England lost the Test series against New Zealand just weeks after the World Cup, the fans had had enough. Hussain was booed by home supporters, a clear reflection of the frustration that had built up for years. England had failed to cross 204 of the last 6 innings and had slipped to the bottom of the world rankings.
We were bottom of the rankings. When we lost that series to New Zealand, we were rock bottom. I went up to do the post-match interview with Paul Allott, got booed by the Oval crowd for losing that series. And the boos sort of just hit home that we better work our way up through these rankings, because our fans and our supporters, we mustn't take them for granted.
The team was sinking and there seemed to be no way out. Their final Test series of the decade summed up their inconsistency. The one remembered for Hansi Cronje's famous declaration on 0 to force a result. Even that controversial twist couldn't save England's reputation. They ended the series 2-1 on the losing side. But amidst the wreckage stood one man, determined to rebuild, Nasir Hussain. He took it upon himself to change the team's destiny, to be the architect of a new England side that would no longer crumble under pressure. His leadership would mark the beginning of a long, painful, yet inspiring rebuild, a new chapter after years of despair. Conclusion. While what Nasir Hussain did and how he changed English cricket is a story of its own, Just to touch on it briefly, he built a side that could fight, a team that gave opponents a tough time, match after match. You could see it in the way he walked onto the field, calm, focused, eyes burning with intent. Training became serious, roles were defined, and credit to the ECB who finally introduced central contracts, bringing clarity and stability to the players and in turn restoring their confidence. There were tours where defeat seemed inevitable, moments when the scoreboard screamed trouble and the crowd sensed another collapse, but England stayed steady, learning to hold on, to grind, to fight even when the odds were stacked against them. That mindset paved the way for the iconic moments that followed under new captains. Through new legends, the struggles of the late 80s and 90s began to fade, replaced by belief and pride. A new chapter had begun, built not on fear of failure, but on the hunger to rise again. And here's a question for you. From the England squad of the 1990s, who was your favorite player? And which match do you still remember? The one that gave you goosebumps or kept you on the edge of your seat? I'll see you in the next one. Bye.